So now we have a working mechanism for solving the part of life's problems called failure and the part of life's problems called feeling trapped. We can also analyze any problem we are having in life that is vague in nature and see that we have a problem with boundaries. We can then close holes, break down walls, and install doors so that we can continue to successfully trade love, ideas, and decision-making with others. Before we turn to emotional energy, I want to take a moment to show you how what we've learned so far can be useful in daily life. When we cross the intellectual functioning spectrum with the decision-making spectrum, we have a grid that helps us to understand other people's general identity. This will help us understand their frame of reference for the decisions they make and ideas they have. This can also help us understand what we need to do to become more whole and complete, more mature. If you notice, in the center, we have perfect psychological integration. This is a fantasy. It is unachievable. There is no perfect psychology. This is reserved for ideal characters in stories. It is impossible to know and have experience in everything. When you choose one way of using your time, you sacrifice everything else. However, it is something to strive for. You get to decide how successful you are or how free you are. You get to decide that you can be a genius. This diagram also points out how important it is to have friends that are different than you are. If you are very book smart and conscious of how your behavior impacts others, you would be well advised to have friends that have a lot of experience and are smart about knowing if the environment will be constructive or destructive to you. Sometimes in school, you might see the nerd pairing up with the jock. This is what is happening. Opposite intellectual styles are complementing each other, and each person is filling their intellectual tanks by learning from someone with a different style. When we cross the spectra of emotional energy and decision-making, we can get a sense of someone's action style. In the yellow area, we have perfect wisdom and high self-esteem. Someone who is high on well-being and conscience might be a wimp or a coward, too afraid of getting hurt or hurting someone else. Someone who is very shrewd and street smart and has a lot of confidence might be an active manipulator. When we start putting these parts together, we can get a sense of where we are and how we should grow. The further to the edges of the circle, the more immature our functioning. Ultimately, we want to continue to grow toward maturity, the center of the circle. The final inner resource of our psychology is our emotional energy. If we want to understand human beings, know that emotions run the show, and then our thinking mind explains our behavior. Have you ever had a fight with a friend? How did it happen? Did you look at the time and the date and say, "I'm late. I was supposed to start this fight 30 minutes ago. I better hurry"? No. Someone said or did something that left you with a bad feeling. You didn't like the feeling, so you blamed them and tried to feel better by making them feel bad. They didn't like feeling bad and blamed you, then tried to make you feel bad so that they didn't feel bad. They didn't like feeling bad and blamed you, then tried to make you feel bad so that they didn't feel bad, and this went back and forth. Or have you ever been so in love with someone or playing a game that made you feel so good that you broke the rules and didn't come home when you told your mom you'd be home? You knew that you were going to get in trouble, but you felt that the good feeling now was worth it. These are two examples of how emotions can hijack decision-making. Emotions alone don't truly run the show, but emotions and how we feel drive more decisions than we might like to admit. Emotions exist on two spectrums, positive and negative. Like all of the spectrums we have covered today, if you can master the far ends of the spectrum, you have mastered everything in between. On the two ends of the positive emotion spectrum, we have well-being and confidence. Well-being feels like being mothered or having our needs met. Confidence is an energy of action, feeling capable of taking risks or tolerating change. Together, we call them self-esteem. When both our tanks of well-being and confidence are filled full and in balance, we can achieve perfect happiness or bliss. On the two ends of the negative spectrum are anger and anxiety, what we call displeasure. Without good energy or positive emotions, all of our talent for decision-making, our boundaries, and our intelligence will leave us feeling unfulfilled. Notice that if you have ever been really angry, you couldn't just pretend it wasn't there, and it didn't just evaporate. When it did go away, it was only after you did something with it. Maybe you exercised, talked to a friend about it, or yelled at someone else who didn't deserve it. Only then did the feeling start to go away. Have you ever been around someone that just drained you? After spending time with them, you felt less alive than before you started spending time with them. Or have you spent time with someone and afterward noticed that you felt more alive? Can you notice the difference in how you feel on your birthday or when you get in trouble with adults? When we talk about energy, this is what we're talking about. This energy is invisible but real. When someone leaves you feeling drained, they have taken away some of your self-esteem. After spending time with them, you felt less confidence and/or had less well-being. When we feel more alive after spending time with someone, they have helped fill us with self-esteem. Better yet, they might have helped you change anger into well-being and anxiety into confidence. When someone is mean to us, they are dumping their anger on us, stealing some of our well-being. Anger is what is left when our well-being is canceled out. When someone complains to us, they are dumping their anxiety onto us and draining away some of our confidence. Anxiety is what is left when our confidence is canceled out. In the middle of the anger and anxiety spectrum, it is neutral. We don't really feel anything. Moving up the anxiety side of the table, and we are more anxious than angry. We might be cautious, then regretful, then maybe get the creeps. At the far end of it is terrified, the worst of all anxiety. Moving toward the angry side, we might have boredom, be annoyed, ticked off, or feel rage at the end of the spectrum. Every uncomfortable situations marked by displeasure, is some part anger and some part anxiety. If you can master anger and anxiety, you can master any emotion in between. So how do we master negative emotions and transform them into positive emotions? Anger has two causes in the world. Hurt coming from outside of our personal boundary and/or on the inside of our personal boundary, our needs are not being met. If someone teases us or talks to others about us in a bad way, it might hurt. If we don't make the soccer team or someone we like isn't interested in us, we might feel hurt. Our need to feel valued and important might not be met. Imagine you walk into a grocery store and none of your needs are being met. You don't have much money, nobody tells you that you are important, no friends to hang out with, no free time, and you have a broken leg. Now imagine that a store employee is rude to you and tells you that you will have to go to the back of a long line. This is a stress called hurt. And if you were in this situation, you would probably be very angry, maybe even full of rage. Now say that the exact same thing happened, but this time all of your needs are met. You just picked up a $10,000 check. Your friends are waiting for you in the car. You have a boyfriend or girlfriend that loves you. You are in great health and have just graduated from high school. This time, you might feel bad for the store employee because he feels so hurt that he has to be mean to other people to make himself feel better. The only difference between these two events was you and your level of self-esteem. Once we are adults, we are responsible for our own level of well-being. Sometimes this even means talking to a therapist and getting professional support. The more we can fill up on well-being and get our needs met, the less we will feel hurt and angry when people say or do mean things to us. If a hurt breaks into our personal boundary and overwhelms us, or is too strong for us, we call this trauma. If this happens, it is important to talk to someone who is trained to be supportive. This is one thing that school counselors do. If something traumatic happens in your life, or you are being hurt at home, counselors can help you get support so that you can be sad or angry until you are comfortable feeling happy again. There are 3 choices of action for dealing with anger: be constructive, be destructive, or do nothing. If we do nothing with anger, it can build up until we explode or turn into depression. We might hold a grudge or give someone the silent treatment and refuse to talk to them. When we do this, we fill up with anger and try to pretend that it's not there. Psychologists have long understood that anger turned inward contributes to depression. Depression is a deep and lasting sadness that stays with us for long periods of time. Sometimes it might lead to having thoughts of harming ourselves. Doing nothing about anger and letting it stay inside us will leave us feeling less alive. It will affect how we feel about life and make us feel less hopeful. We might even start to think that anything we do is pointless. If this continues for a long enough period of time, it can even affect our physical health. The first step in changing how we feel is to notice how we feel. Noticing that we are angry or hurt. Next, we have to try and understand why we are angry. Maybe I am angry because when I get teased, I feel like I don't belong and I'm not wanted. If we can identify why we feel angry, we can then figure out what kinds of decisions we need to make to start changing things. Remember, by definition, decisions are life. Our lives are the sum total of every decision we ever make, constructive or destructive. When most people think about anger, they think about being destructive. We call this being aggressive. If someone is being teased and they hit the person teasing them, we call this being aggressive and being destructive. This is hurting others so that we feel better. This is dumping our anger on other people. Aggression is immature and childish because it does not respect other people's boundaries. All people being destructive see the world as a win-lose place of scarcity. Everything in life is competitive for them. In order for them to win, someone else has to lose. Aggression is a form of suffering because it seeks to control others in the environment. We try to change someone else's behavior by hurting them. Sometimes we seek to hurt others so that we don't have to feel angry or depressed anymore. All suffering takes our energy, positive or negative. We cannot control the past, and we cannot control the future. Burning anger on the past or the future, something we cannot control, is suffering. Spending anger on the past is called revenge. Wishing to hurt someone who has already hurt us so that we can get the self-esteem we lost when we were hurt. Spending anger on the future is called jealousy. Jealousy means feeling hurt because someone will have something that we won't. We make this mean they won and we lost. Jealousy and revenge are both suffering and forms of aggression. Aggression is caused by a lack of conscience and so much intuition about how the world works that we get overconfident and start to believe that we are all that matter. We neglect the rights and boundaries of others. The cure for aggression is to cultivate more conscience to balance our full tank of intuition. Again, conscience is knowing if our behavior is constructive or destructive to others. The problem with aggression is it makes people in the environment feel less safe and more likely to be hurt. So if we feel hurt and are aggressive to other people, society will step in and keep us from hurting other people. We call this jail. In school, this is bullying and it will get you sent to the principal's office. A lot of people end up in jail because they felt angry and decided to be destructive with their anger and hurt another person. What these people don't understand is that anger can be constructive. Understand this: it is okay to be angry, but it is not okay to be destructive. Anger used in a constructive way is called being assertive, and it is the only way to break out of a cycle of aggression. Assertiveness means we learn to go out independently, patiently, and maturely and get our needs met without hurting others, using others, or doing more hurt to anyone. It requires patience, discipline, respect for boundaries, and sees the world as a place of abundance, that there is enough for everyone to share. Some people mistake assertiveness for arrogance, and it is not. We can't help others if we haven't first helped ourselves. Just like on the airplane, we put our mask on first before we help others. We can't help others if our needs are not first met. This is not selfish, this is the basics. Don't help your classmate with her homework if you haven't done yours first. If you don't pass the class, it is going to be you who is taking the class over again in night school, not your friend. Help your friend, but after you have done your homework first. Doing assertiveness creates positive momentum in our lives, and we fill up with more and more well-being. There are only two sources of anxiety in the world: loss, a stress coming from outside of our boundary, or being low on confidence or trust from inside of our boundary. Again, our personal boundary is our first line of defense against loss. However, once loss gets into our personal boundary and it transforms into anxiety, it is now ours to deal with. Imagine you get a bill for $10,000 in the mail that you did not expect and you are not confident about money. You would probably feel anxious. Now suppose that the same thing happens, but you are a trained accountant and are very confident with money. Even if you didn't have money in the bank, you would not be anxious because you knew how to get the money to pay the bill. Like anger, anxiety is neither good or bad. Anxiety is a signal that tells you something is wrong. Anxiety signals that you have fears, challenges, change, or risk to face. Again, we can be passive, constructive, or destructive with anxiety. When we are passive with anxiety, it leads to avoidance or being impulsive. To be impulsive means to take action without first thinking. When we are passive with our anxiety and try to avoid it, we tend to go on autopilot because we are in survival mode. Yet most of the things we are anxious about are not a real threat to our physical lives. However, this instinct still drives us to act without thinking. We then overeat, overspend, get addicted, and many other behaviors that actually do become a threat to our lives if we do them long enough. How many people do you know that started smoking or vaping because they don't feel confident in groups of people? It gives them something to do and helps them manage anxiety. The first step of getting out of being passive is to stop acting without thinking and try to understand why we feel so anxious that we are overeating, overspending, overworking, addicted to drugs, alcohol, or pills. These behaviors might change the way we feel temporarily, but if the source of the anxiety is not addressed, the avoidance behaviors will get more and more intense and eventually can harm us. Since doing nothing with anxiety can really harm us, the choice then is to be constructive or destructive with the anxiety. Unlike anger that requires action to change, anxiety requires a change in thinking. We call it victim thinking or victim identity when we think destructively with anxiety. We take a poor me attitude, falsely believing that we are truly hopeless or helpless. We worry about the future and complain without offering solutions. We regret the past and wished we could control what is no longer in our control. When we worry and complain, we just dump our anxiety onto other people. When we dump our worry and anxiety into someone else's boundary, we are asking them to worry for us. We might feel a little better because we complained, but now the other person has lost some of their peace. This is win-lose behavior. Make no mistake about it. Some of us are victimized in terrible ways and are truly victims. But this conversation is about where we feel we belong in the world. An adult person who walks and talks and can do adult things is never truly hopeless or helpless. To think otherwise is an illusion. When we get victim-like beliefs about the world, it forces others to participate in that illusion with us. This is where anxiety connects to depression. The action style of people who are depressed is to get passive and do nothing, but their thinking style is actually a victim thinking style when it comes to anxiety. If you turn anger outward, you start to get healthier and less depressed. But if you leave anxiety directed outward, you get more and more anxious. Anger needs to be used outwardly in action, and anxiety needs to be processed and faced inwardly before action. This is why many people exercise when they feel angry. It helps them do something with the anger. When we are destructive with our anxiety, we worry and complain, dumping that anxiety onto someone else and taking some of their peace. We win, they lose. We might complain to our friends or classmates about a teacher. We complain about how helpless we are and how we believe there is no hope in getting good grades. When we take this attitude long enough, people will get sick of it and not want to listen to us if we aren't going to do something about it. This will just make things worse for the complainer. Complainers and whiners attract the attention of soft-hearted friends in the short run, but tire them out and lose those friends in the long run. This creates a negative feedback loop and prevents us from becoming the very best version of ourselves possible. Suppose you lose your wallet or your purse and you feel some anxiety when you realize it. There is money in there and pictures of your boyfriend or your girlfriend or your family. Maybe you start to worry about this and complain about it 10 times. Now you have worried 10 times, acted like a victim 10 times, and given your brain 10 times the experience of losing one wallet. If you don't wake up and observe yourself doing this, it might turn into an obsession, wanting to control something that you can't control. We might have regret about the past or worry about the future, and in no time it feels like we have lost 100 wallets or purses. This is how we create anxiety for ourselves. Victim thinking with an obsessive intellectual style is dangerous. In the problem above, all you ever had to do was worry once about the wallet, look for it once, and start planning a life with the wallet you lost. The constructive way out of problems with anxiety, victimization, being impulsive, addictions, and lack of confidence is courage. Simply put, to do courage is to do the right thing. Knowing what the right thing is comes from intuition and conscience. Knowing if you are being constructive or destructive to the environment, and knowing if the environment will be constructive or destructive to you. Therefore, courage is not bravery and is not fearlessness or anything else we lack or acquire. It is a decision. Make the decision to be smart, even if people call you a nerd. Make the decision to be healthy, even if someone says you're weird. Have the courage to be the very best version of yourself possible, even if the people around you don't understand it. After all, whose life are you living? Theirs or yours? It is okay if we make mistakes. This is how we learn and get experience. However, this is not an excuse to be destructive to others. If we are destructive, we have to make it right. Understand that learning what the right thing to do is takes time. We all grow from destructiveness to constructiveness as we make decisions through life. With every decision we make, we fill our tanks on conscience and intuition. Making mistakes is part of the process. It is not important that it is successful. It is important that you continue trying to do better until you get the results you want. Again, this takes time. Courage, then, is a decision. Every time we make a decision, we have to be in the present moment and observe the choices we make. If we are alive, we can always make a decision. Courage is a constructive way of thinking before acting, done in a win-win way that sees the world as a place of abundance. To have faith in something, we need to have some degree of belief that our actions in the future will work out, even if we don't have conclusive proof that they will. But then we have to decide to think and act according to that faith we have in ourselves. Every decision we make demonstrates to the world what we truly believe and value. Courage, then, is a decision to do the right thing. There is a tribe in Africa, the Maasai tribe. For the boys to become men, they had to kill a lion with a spear. They did this because they live in an area surrounded by lions, and sometimes the lions would try to attack the village and the people in the tribe. The boy doesn't become a man because he kills a lion. The boy becomes a man because he faces his fear and does the right thing to protect the village. He is learning to practice courage. Courage is what separates boys from men and girls from women. This makes me wonder, did the ancient Chamorro people have a ritual like this? If so, what was it? What do we do today to mark the psychological shift from boy to man and girl to woman? However, courage does not mean you go out and do stupid things that actually threaten and endanger your life or someone else's life. That is not courage. That is being foolish. If you are in a real threat for your life, you allow yourself to trust your instincts and allow your body to get you out of harm's way. Even soldiers who put themselves in harm's way train and prepare so that they can stay alive in dangerous environments. Courage takes time, patience, and discipline, like all mature character traits. Go easy on yourself and do your best. All this training today is about helping you to understand the different ways that you can grow so that you can become the very best version of yourself possible. There is no competition. The journey of life is about you being the very best version of yourself possible and being an example of courage, not just once, but in every moment. This concludes our crash course of Dr. Paul Dobransky's Mind OS model of psychology. If you've made it this far, I want to say congratulations. Many people say they are willing to do the work to have a life they love, but even fewer back it up with action. It is my hope that viewing this program helps you to live a life you love and gives you the confidence to help others also find durable fulfillment.